Fracture prints your digital photos directly onto glass, making your favorite moments come alive in vivid color. Hand-assembled in the USA, Fracture glass prints are a unique and beautiful way to display and share your favorite moments. Simply upload your photo at fractureme.com, select your size, and your glass print will be shipped to you, ready to hang with just one screw. Use code POD15 to get 15% off your order today. That's code POD15 at fractureme.com.
Dennis, come on, bring the heat. Dennis, come on, bring the heat.
Come on, man. Bring the heat, Dennis. Come on, Dennis. Bring the heat. Dennis Lynn, you can read at The Athletic, and you should follow him on Twitter. Most of you already do that. Dennis, you going to bring the heat today or what?
Hey, Darren, I don't think I brought the heat on that last one. I think Blake Snell is being kind to me and AJ Cassville, but I will take it.
He was kind, wasn't he? What happened there? I mean, walk us through it. We went through this in great detail yesterday. I mean, this was like a John Boy production. But what was going on from your vantage point? You're in the press box. Blake Snell's just about wrapped up. He's done with his Zoom press conference here. All of a sudden, what?
Well, I think AJ and I were the only two who did have our cameras on for this Zoom who hadn't asked questions at that point, and he must have been paying some pretty close attention because he took notice, and when he was presumably supposed to be done and Padres PR was ready to wrap it up and send him home or send him to the airport, he he took a second to call us out because he saw that we were just kind of chilling in the background.
So you guys had your cameras on so he could see your faces. You didn't just put your names up there. See, that's how I avoid that sort of detection. I don't want anybody calling on me. So much like when we were all in school, Dennis, Blake Snell called on you because he could see you and he didn't want to let the day go without making sure that you had asked a question. How'd you feel like you did in that moment?
Yeah, well, that was kind of the feeling of like getting called on in school when you're not expecting it. But yeah, I thought AJ asked a good question. I don't know about myself, but yeah, he's a good hype man. I guess he hyped up our questions, which were, in my opinion, very ordinary.
What was your backup? You went with a Ryan Weathers question yesterday. Was that first and foremost, or you had a second to think about it because AJ jumped in there first? What was the backup question? What else were you thinking? If you could do it over again, would you still ask about Ryan Weathers, or would you go a different route?
I would still ask about Ryan Weathers. I had no backup, so I was all in on Ryan Weathers at that point.
That's good.
Yeah, fellow lefty. Yeah. He had just talked about the rotation, hadn't mentioned Ryan Weathers, so it occurred to me that it might be a decent topic. And yeah, he had some decent thoughts. He always has some decent thoughts on everything, it seems like. So it's been a nice addition, I think, to the San Diego media landscape. I know people don't really care about the media, but yeah, it's pretty rare you come across an athlete who seems to enjoy doing these Zooms, and I think Blake Snell is probably in the top 1% among MLB or even just U.S. professional athletes in that regard.
Well, I know what you're saying about nobody cares about the media, right? Like nobody cares about us and us talking about how difficult at times this could be. But, I think what stood out to me about this, if I am going to try to take any sort of serious angle on it, Dennis, is we've had plenty of athletes who don't really care to do this sort of thing. And they make it very clear that they're not interested in doing this sort of stuff. And it's not that it impacts you and what you do at The Athletic or me on Extra 1360, but that's access that fans then are deprived of. So, Blake Snell very much understands that this now turns into something not that just benefits you or AJ or me or anybody else here in local media, but now the fans get an opportunity to learn a little bit about this guy and see what his personality is. And I think that there is something to be said for that.
I totally agree. And, he could take the route of you guys don't need anything extra on these Zooms. I'm on Twitch all the time. At least I think he is, and he shares his thoughts freely there. But no, he seems to be pretty consistent in terms of being open with anyone, whether it's the media or, fans online. So, props to him.
Absolutely. Dennis Lynn from The Athletic is joining us on Extra 1360. I half jokingly said, Dennis, right before we were wrapping up hour number one, I feel like I'm a bad talk show host because I can't come up with any hot take here as to what it is that we've seen over 7 days. I can't huff and puff about Tommy Pham or about Paddock yet. But, through 7 games here, is there anything really good, bad that stood out to you? The club is 4-3. They start their first road trip tonight. There's only 155 more games to go. Is there anything good or bad that really, really jumped out at you here through the first homestand of the 2021 season?
To start with the bad, I think it's actually pretty clear. I mean, the defense needs cleaned up, and most of the errors that they committed, and I think might still be a league high 8 errors, are attributed to Fernando Tatis, who is also part of the bad, just him being hurt and not really knowing his status for the rest of the season, even when he comes back, if he comes back, how that's going to pan out. But yeah, the defense is something that they think is supposed to be their strength, which has not been their strength at all, and it's kind of ruined the good, which is the pitching. The pitching has been really strong, especially in the bullpen. You're not going to get that, that phase all season where things are going to line up with good pitching, good defense, good offense. Right now, they're seemingly are only getting one of those, so you want to take advantage of that, especially with workload so uncertain this season. And these guys seem to be starting off pretty well overall. So, pitching's good, defense is bad. Not a very nuanced take there, I guess, but yeah, that's what I got.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what it is, and with such a small sample size of 7 games, I know people would want a little bit more here. But gosh, it's such a long season. That said, though, Dennis, the expectations, right? And that this team has very clearly said it thinks it could have the best offense in Major League Baseball. It should be a playoff contender. The owner came on this radio station a week ago and said how he defines the season is as a World Series winner. And from that standpoint, do you get the sense, internally maybe, do we need to rewire ourselves in terms of, these things are big deals. If you lose a series to the San Francisco Giants at home, it is a big deal, and it should be treated as a big deal because, this is a team now in a season that carries with it much greater expectations than ever before.
Yes and no, because you don't want to look back, say, several months from now and regret 1 or 2 games slipping away and costing you something in terms of October. But at the same time, they are going back to 162, so you need to, I think, broaden the lens from that perspective that this is definitely no longer, dash to the finish line, 60-game dash to the finish line. So, yeah, from that standpoint, they're also approaching the season very differently. Sitting Eric Hosmer after he had 2 really hot starts to the season or 2 really hot games to start the season, and they immediately sit him, and they're, not letting guys like Blake Snell pitch deeper than 5 innings quite yet based on, game circumstances and pitch counts. So I think you have to keep that in perspective too. But yeah, it's fair to expect, a lot more than the Padres usually have expectations for this year, just because, the owner came out and said it. They expect to win a World Series this year, but they also expect to try to compete for a World Series the next few years. So it's I guess patience is also, warranted here, in that this isn't a one-off, go for it all type of season. If they don't win the World Series, I don't think anyone's going to be surprised. I think it's just fair to expect that they're going to make the playoffs, or hope that they're going to make the playoffs and hopefully make a deep run.
Dennis Lin from The Athletic is joining us on Extra 1360. The story of the first homestand, obviously, was Fernando Tatis Jr. And like you said, first it was the 5 errors, and it was lack of offense, and was he pressing? And then we find out that there's a much bigger storyline going on with Fernando Tatis Jr. I guess looking back, Dennis, was this predictable that we would find ourselves in this situation at some point, right? Was it a question of if we would find ourselves in a moment like this with Fernando Tatis Jr., or was it a question of when we would find ourselves in this situation?
If you listen to doctors who haven't treated or diagnosed them personally, and just looking at what's out there, what's been public, first of all, the May 13th slide into home plate in the spring training game where he kind of jarred that left shoulder. And then 10 days later when he either subluxed or did something with that shoulder again. And then, this coming less than 2 weeks later where he takes a swing, another non-contact you would, I guess, call a very routine play. And, that shoulder comes out of the socket again. Yeah, this is pretty predictable. It's funny to me looking back. Actually, I thought about this the other day. I think this is either 2014 or 2013. Tyson Ross's first major league hit, speaking of pitchers hitting this year, by the way, he subluxed his left shoulder. So same shoulder as Tatis, non-throwing shoulder. And I don't think we ever heard about him having a problem with it again. After that, he came back, I think, a month or 2 later, and then went on to have a very good season that year and the next 2 years. So, yeah, sometimes these things happen once and they go away. But with Tatis, it's been multiple times, multiple episodes now. Just from the way doctors describe it, there's different severity or degrees of severity for each one of these episodes, and it seems like his last one was pretty moderate at least. And, he has some slight labral tearing, either from that incident or I'm guessing maybe even before from prior incidents. So, yeah, it's, health with health and injuries. future predictors of injury are, current or past injuries. So something like this and a very insecure joint in the shoulder, that's going to be probably a topic for a long time afterward, regardless of whether he needs surgery or not. And I think a lot of people are of the mind that eventually he's probably going to need surgery just because, he's got a long career ahead of him, and you want to stabilize the most unstable joint in the body to give him the best chance of success.
Do you think the Padres know what they can reasonably expect from Tatis Jr. for the remainder of 2021? Like, do you think deep down that they know one way or the other that he will be available or he'll be in and out, or, this probably isn't going to work? Do you think that the Padres themselves, is it possible for them physically, based on all the research now we've all done on this subject here, do you think they actually know what the future is, the immediate future is for Fernando Tatis Jr.?
I think they definitely expect him to get back on the field, whether that's in the 10-day minimum or maybe sometime after that. They just don't know what to expect after that, because it's very possible, as AJ Preller said the other day, that this happens again. And at that point, they would probably have to consider surgery. But it's also possible, like in the case of Tyson Ross, that this doesn't come back, or, he manages to play through some minor things that we don't hear about. But yeah, they don't know what to expect, and they're also talking about kind of changing the way he plays, whether that's maybe going to a two-handed finish on his swing, which in theory doesn't sound that hard, or maybe just using that a little more often. But there's going to be a lot of attention paid on just the way he plays the game. So that could affect his performance even if he stays on the field. So they're very curious too how this pans out, and I don't think anyone could predict when the next time he's going to have a shoulder instability episode is. They just know that it's a distinct possibility.
Yeah, Preller said as much here in his press conference the other day. I wonder, Dennis, have you heard anything about what the plan might be for, and you said in theory it sounds like a simple thing to do, to maintain a two-handed swing or change the way you slide or potentially the way you field. Is that something that they're figuring out here on the fly?
Well, there are some things they talked about with him in the past before. I think now that, he had this incident where he went down in a lot of pain from just one swing on the field, maybe that gives him more impetus to actually embrace some of these things. But yeah, I think it's going to be a learn as you go kind of thing. They're not going to completely overhaul his game, obviously, and tagging up from third or sliding head first to home is just a small part of his game. It's a very visible, very exciting part of his game. So I think it's maybe not as drastic as we're imagining it to be, but at the same time, it is going to be, a very major adjustment, just trying to keep him on the field for the rest of the season, if that's even a possibility, because they have to be mindful of these things and trying to minimize, even diving in at shortstop, diving on defense, going to the ground. They're going to try to minimize that to an extent, or just try to have him in better positions to protect that shoulder. So it's going to be pretty interesting adjustment, I think. And I don't think they know as well on this how that's going to all turn out this year.
Right. And I wonder, at what percentage are you okay with Fernando Tatis Jr.? You know what I mean? Like if you feel like you're not getting 100% of him, what is good enough? What is good enough to maintain and keep him here as an integral part of the day in, day out lineup, and being in there and being a starter for the team, being a contributor for the team?
Yeah, I do. I think I do understand the kind of thinking here with, if it's not, major labral damage, and you're looking at the time of the year, it's beginning of the season. Let's say, he comes back 2 weeks from now, and, that shoulder comes out again, and a few days after that, and he has to undergo surgery. That doesn't really change anything as far as the timeline for coming back next season, you would think, in theory. Now, this surgery isn't, 100% guaranteed to work, but if he gets it, most times it works, and it's 4 to 6 months in a lot of cases, or a little more than that. But if you just look at the time of the year right now, if he undergoes surgery now versus say a month from now, it's not really going to make a difference as far as his timetable for recovery. So I get why they're not, resorting to the most drastic option right away.
Dennis, we appreciate it. We know Jace Tingler's getting set for a press conference. We will let you focus on your actual job, but we appreciate you taking the time to join us here yet again today. Thanks for the time. Appreciate it. Great stuff. Keep it up.
Thanks, Darren.
Bring the heat. You got it. Dennis Lynn from The Athletic stopping by here.
Fracture prints your digital photos directly onto glass, making your favorite moments come alive in vivid color. Hand assembled in the USA, Fracture glass prints are a unique and beautiful way to display and share your favorite moments. Simply upload your photo at fractureme.com, select your size, and your glass print will be shipped to you, ready to hang with just one screw. Use code POD15 to get 15% off your order today. That's code POD15 at fractureme.com.